We want to start with what's happening right now in Middle East and what is going on in Canada. And while I will admit, surprisingly, we didn't see this one coming, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who recently applauded and celebrated a Ukrainian Nazi on the floor of Parliament, Justin Trudeau, who fights to take away freedoms of speech, Justin Trudeau, who pushes state-assisted suicide. Canada now leads the world in state-assisted suicide. Justin Trudeau, who called people who didn't want vaccine mandates white supremacists and like Trump supporters. I think that's what he said. Who pushes transgender ideology in schools? Well, Justin Trudeau slammed Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, telling him to stop killing babies in Gaza. It's like, wait a minute, what kind of alternative reality am I living in where Justin Trudeau is saying stop killing babies in Gaza and tells them to exercise maximum restraint in the war? I can honestly say I did not have this one on my Trudeau bingo card. Maybe you did, but I certainly didn't. But
no, he's not going to break with the U.S., him doing that.
I know.
And U.S. politicians, I was like,
yeah, I'm like, wow, what a pivot here. Okay. Could this be a sign that Netanyahu is about to be pushed out of Israel? The Israeli Knesset holding impeachment meetings in Israel? Yes, they just did that. And Netanyahu might be out of power sooner rather than later. We'll have more on that piece of the story in a second. But Trudeau issued a statement overnight calling for restraint in Gaza. He said that the killing of women, children, and babies in the besieged Gaza Strip must end. And he said, I urge the government of Israel to exercise maximum restraint. The world is watching. The world is witnessing the killing of women, of children, of babies. This has to stop. Wow. It's like amazing. He just woke up. Too bad he didn't speak out against the genocide in the Donbass over the past 10 years in Ukraine. He was certainly on the side of Ukraine, which is odd. It's a weird, it's this really weird dichotomy between these two.
That some genocides you like and some you don't.
Yeah, like he's like anti-Gaza genocide.
It's
but
like a flavor of ice cream.
Yeah, he's like pro-genocide in the Donbass. I don't know. It's like you pick your ethnic killings, I guess. So killing of ethnic Russians is okay in the Donbass, apparently, but when we're looking at Palestinians, it's not. So, they were, of course, attacking their schools in the Donbass, right? That's what Ukraine was doing. Hospitals, playgrounds. For 10 years, ethnic Russians were being slaughtered. And
civilian infrastructure.
Civilian infrastructure, residential areas. No one was saying a word about it. It's being hidden by the international community because it didn't fit the Western narrative of the coup, the government that the West placed in Ukraine, right? It was a Western-backed coup, United States, NATO-backed government inside of Ukraine. So, of course, they're behind the genocide. That's fine. They kill civilians. They're totally happy with that. But this is progress. So here is Trudeau in his own words. Listen.
The human tragedy that is unfolding in Gaza is heart-wrenching, especially the suffering we see in and around the Al-Shifa hospital. I have been clear that the price of justice cannot be the continued suffering of all Palestinian civilians. Even wars have rules. All innocent life is equal in worth, Israeli and Palestinian. I urge the government of Israel to exercise maximum restraint. As the world is watching, on TV, on social media, we're hearing the testimonies of doctors, family members, survivors, kids who've lost their parents. The world is witnessing this, the killing of women and children, of babies. This has to stop.
So he didn't mince any words there.
I wonder what the political calculation is of that.
Well, as I've spoken with David Creighton here on the show, friend of the show up in Ottawa, he said, is he pandering for votes recently, of course, and aligning with separatists, aligning with socialists in Parliament, of course, to try to get the votes he needs, right, to win. So is he trying to curry favor right now? Perhaps. Maybe he's trying to pander here.
This is a cynical thing that we're asking, right? We're not giving him any credit for perhaps actually feeling those things. I admit to that.
Right.
That these are cynical questions because we think he is politically calculating dude.
And he is a member of the World Economic Forum, and he's a young Klaus Schwab protege.
But we can leave space on the fact that it may be sincere. So
maybe.
Right.
And maybe he's like turning a leaf here. So, but I'm going to say there's no like equivocation in those words. Like he didn't mince words at all.
No,
There's
and
no
you see
gray
how
area
the
there.
American government and the UK government has fired politicians for speaking such.
Silence canceled.
Yes, absolutely. And also is sort of mincing words absolutely with we don't want a ceasefire, we just want a pause, a humanitarian pause.
Yes, we
because
can't
a
call it a
ceasefire may piss you off, Israel, so we won't say it, but we would actually like a little bit, like just a beat.
Yeah.
A day without some killing.
Like a deep breath, and then you can get back to the killing.
Right.
You can get back to leveling buildings. So Israeli Prime Minister and by the way, let me just point out, this is not a justification for. I hate the fact that we have to make this caveat because you're going to be people in the chat. They're going to be like, so wait a minute, you're in favor of what happened on October 7th? Like, no, come on, wake up, please, please, please. Look, no, we've absolutely condemned the barbaric acts of what happened on October 7th and killed innocent people. Right?
So we do not think any innocent people in response need to die.
Exactly.
No, 1-to-1, and the ratio here is not anywhere near that.
So it is, is Trudeau pandering for votes? I don't know. You let us know in the comments below, but he didn't mince words there. Or did he, truly have a change of heart? I don't know. Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was having none of that. Oh, he was like, no, Mr. Trudeau, let's set the record straight. He fired this tweet off in response. Hey, at Justin Trudeau, or I added the period there. No, he added the period. At Justin Trudeau.
You can't edit his tweets.
I can't edit his tweet. I meant I added the emphasis of it. I just added the hey. There was no hey. He just said at Justin Trudeau. It is not Israel that is deliberately targeting civilians, but Hamas that beheaded, burned, and massacred civilians in the worst horrors perpetrated on Jews since the Holocaust. While Israel is doing everything to keep civilians out of harm's way, Hamas is doing everything to keep them in harm's way. Israel provides civilians in Gaza humanitarian corridors and safe zones. Hamas prevents them from leaving at gunpoint. It is Hamas, not Israel, that should be held accountable for committing a double war crime, targeting civilians while hiding behind civilians. The forces of civilization must back Israel in defeating Hamas barbarism. Of course, you would have to be willfully ignorant to believe that, because that's a laughable response. No one with a brain who's been reading, following the reports, the independent journalists, the non-state-run media journalists, let's be clear, not the ones that are actually mouthpieces of the intelligence communities, but real journalists no one believes that for 1 second that what Netanyahu is saying is true. Come on. And again, you have to be willfully ignorant to believe that. Everyone knows civilians are being targeted. It's well documented. And you are doing, quote, everything you can to keep civilians out of harm's way? Really? Again, all evidence to the contrary. And he says that Israel is providing civilian safe zones so they can move freely. Okay. Is that a lie? Because we've seen evidence to the contrary. Individuals being told to move, and when they're on the back of a flatbed truck, they are targeted and destroyed. Innocent civilians who are being forced out of hospitals, and when they're in the streets, they're being shot at by snipers. So when civilians are told to move out and clear out, they are shot and killed. This has been confirmed. IDF snipers have been firing at medical staff, according to the doctors that work there. And these are not Palestinian doctors. These are doctors from all over the world that work in these hospitals. Norway and other parts of Europe, German doctors who've watched literally standing there while a nurse next to them is shot in the head by sniper fire. At the Al-Shifa hospital specifically, but others as well. So if you don't know this is happening, then you are willfully ignorant. You just aren't looking for the information, and you are not reading. You are getting your information from state-run media sources. Wake up. Or you have some sort of like internal bias that forces you to not be able to look for the truth.
Well, that for sure is happening to all of us, right?
Yeah.
You sort of pick a side and then you're like, well, I'm not going to believe that when you see something that conflicts against your bias.
But apparently the Israeli propaganda is working even in New Jersey with New Jersey housewives who hang out on TikTok all day.
Did you see what the Israeli army did in Gaza? Oh my God. They stood by and secured humanitarian passage for Palestinians to safely evacuate to the south of Gaza. I repeat, here is an Israeli tank protecting Palestinian civilians who are walking peacefully to a secure location in Gaza. Now, previously, this wasn't possible because Hamas was shooting Palestinian civilians who were trying to evacuate to the south of the Strip. But now that Israel's ground operation did this, they're able to secure this passageway for Palestinians fleeing the north without Hamas interference. Now, I think that it's fair to say that this is not a genocide. And it is just more proof that Israel cares more about the Palestinian people than Hamas does. So support Israel. Free Palestine from Hamas.
Yes, Israel cares more about the Palestinian people.
Then why can't they evacuate into Israel?
Right. If that's the case, open up safe passage so they can all pour into Israel instead of telling us that they are human animals.
That they can only go to
Sinai.
Egypt.
Yeah, they can live in 10 cities in Sinai. Open up. So if she's absolutely right, then yeah, absolutely. Open up humanitarian corridors and welcome them into Tel Aviv. Like welcome them in and house them, shelter them, take care of the babies that now have their incubators upside down and turned and closed down. The water supply. So absolutely, if that's the case, if Israel truly does feel that way, then yes, do that. She seems like she's really smart. I wonder if that woman is aware of who funded and actually who created Hamas. Sure she is. She seems like a really smart person. I'm sure she's fully aware of the history of Hamas and how Israel helped to spawn Hamas. I bet it would rock her world to learn that Hamas is a tool of Israel and the United States, fully funded and supported by Israel and the United States. They had no weapons at all until the United States provided them and gave support as a countermeasure to Yasser Arafat. Sure, that's maybe an inconvenient truth for her. But Netanyahu is right about one thing, though. Hamas should be held accountable for what they did on October 7th, the barbaric attack on October 7th. He's right about that. Even Justin Trudeau addressed that, saying Hamas needs to release all hostages that it grabbed on October 7th. Yes, do that. Please do that. Release these individuals so they can go back to their families, who, by the way, have been protesting in downtown Tel Aviv, begging for the government to get them, negotiate, bring them back. But back to Netanyahu. I've spoken to Israeli sources who tell me Netanyahu cannot survive this. U.S. media, of course.
Politically, we're talking about politically.
Politically, yes, cannot survive this politically. His days in his political days are numbered. U.S. media are hiding the fact that Israelis by the thousands are protesting Netanyahu, calling for him to step down. You won't see this footage on U.S. television, of course. These are protests against Netanyahu in Israel, in Tel Aviv. These are happening daily now. So how did Hamas manage to use a bulldozer and cross the border fence, and for one whole hour Israel did nothing? It is the most heavily watched and controlled border in the world. How did Hamas manage to pull this off? Of course, many Israelis feel like they're being used and lied to by Netanyahu. After all, he was the security guy. I will keep you safe. Well, that didn't work. You also won't learn that this week, the Israeli Knesset, if you watch mainstream media, you won't see this. CNN's not covering this. But the Israeli Knesset held impeachment meetings to oust Netanyahu from power. Discussions about how they will mull and push towards impeachment. So let's just read through this. This is from the Cradle. 2/3 of the Israeli public say they want Netanyahu out of office as he's refused to take responsibility for his role in this crisis and the attack. And it goes on here. We'll just scroll down a little bit here on this. So Knesset members discussed on November 13th the potential of ousting Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu once the war between Palestinian resistance factions in Tel Aviv comes to an end. Israel's Channel 13 reports that ministers and members of the Knesset from Netanyahu's own Likud party discussed impeaching the premier, saying that if he remains in the party and an election is held, most party members will give a vote of no confidence. And they said they basically came together and said they will, they're going to form, basically form an opposition party, form an opposition government. And hundreds of thousands of people have taken to the streets before October 7th to express their outrage over Benjamin Netanyahu. I had friends in Israel who were telling me this was unprecedented, what was happening before October 7th. The tens of thousands of people that were protesting Netanyahu, they didn't believe he would survive then. So meanwhile, Saudi Arabia, by the way, and other Muslim countries are at their summit. They had the summit this week, and they called on Israel to immediately stop the attack on civilians in Gaza and put an end to the conflict. They also said the only way forward is for Palestinians to be given their own country, officially recognized as Palestine. That is the official U.S. position, by the way, as well. If you think that's so out of the realm of possibility, that's the U.S. position, a two-state solution. But you wouldn't know it to watch Democrats and Republicans in their Kumbaya ceremony this week, shilling for Israel, holding their own press conference saying no to a ceasefire in Gaza, with crowds chanting no to a ceasefire in Gaza. Can you imagine in 2023 in America, instead of calling for a peaceful solution to a bloody conflict where tens of thousands of people are being killed at the hand of U.S. taxpayer dollars for the weapons that are being sent there, while Americans are struggling to pay their mortgages and their rent and their gas bills and their energy bills, but we can send billions of dollars for this. Can you imagine?
We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel.
And look at all the Israeli flags there, saying no to a ceasefire. The U.S. Capitol filled with Israeli flags. You want to talk about where their loyalties are, right? Shilling for a foreign government like that. It's unbelievable to watch. I don't know. It's an unbelievable moment to see. So you have, on the one hand, Justin Trudeau calling for an end to the bloodshed and in very strict words saying, stop this now, essentially. Women, babies being killed, doctors being shot at, nurses being shot at. Stop it now. And then you have Chuck Schumer with the new Speaker of the House holding up hands, shouting for Israel. It's a really weird optics.
Must be very confusing.
Well, I said,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I said yesterday, like they need to change the hashtag, say no to ceasefire to say yes to killing civilians.
Yeah.
I just would like to see it framed that way. Like on people are pro more civilian deaths. That's what they're actually advocating for.
Yeah.
It's just
because
more hardship.
Because the argument, of course, is like, well, they're going in there to get the hostages back. No, they're not.
Right.
That's not at all what they're doing. That's not their goal at all. Clearly, if they would have negotiated this and to stop this as part of like some sort of a 5-day pause, give the hostages back, stop the killing, allow aid and supplies to come in and help people. That's not what's happening at all. So
in that one case where that explosion happened in that refugee thing or whatever, they were like, well, but we got one Hamas person. It's like they are at the mindset that all of these mass casualties that happened at that bombing were worth it because they got one Hamas person.
Yeah.
One Hamas director.
Thank you, Tron.
Director.
Yeah.
Your lighting looks like Tron today. Mm-hmm. Doesn't it?
Does it?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's David the flirting head.
Now.
All right. I was just going to also point out that it's confusing to people who are just used to being so offended by everything Justin Trudeau does. Like, wait a minute. Did you just say something sincere? I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
That's a little bit how I feel.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to admit to that.
Well, anyway, I know. And for us, we slam Justin Trudeau here on the show all the time for the things that he's done.
It's
right?
like a pastime.
So it really is, because the tyranny, the authoritarianism is very, very strong. And so we will hold him to account. But when just to show you we're fair, I mean, he says this and we're saying, here it is. Take a look at this, world. Like, he's actually said something that we agree with, which is unbelievable. So let us know your thoughts on that.
It's a low bar, no killing of babies.
Right.
But I'm glad we got something.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.